I spent probably 20 years now working on rare disease drug development as an academic originally at BioMarin, and in fact developed 3 approved therapies there and put several others into development. So very experienced in the process of doing this. And although there have been many successes and certainly a number of rare disease programs have received approval, I've also noted a number of the challenges of getting some of these rare diseases treated, including diseases like Niemann-Pick C and rare cancers, as spoken by the prior panelist. I think the challenge is that when you have a disease like Matthew here, it's so rare that it's just very hard to get any movement from either investment to really push this forward. Now, Matthew has a disease which was treated successfully in animals in 1993. It's been repeated many, many times. It's very reliable. In fact, there's other diseases like this that have already been treated, but he's not treated because his disease is so rare, there's just no way to get the system to work and to do the kind of studies required that would be so costly that it wouldn't, hasn't rated any interest in investment. And every week I get calls from parents like Matthew who have been, as I say, hit with genetic lightning, shocked by a finding that their kid has some unpronounceable disease, and now they have to suddenly become scientist, researcher, and also biotech executive in order to make anything happen, and that shouldn't be. And I think there's a lot more we could do. And so I founded the EveryLife Foundation for Rare Diseases really to focus on trying to improve the process, not just to let anything get through, but to do sound, scientifically good decisions that would help improve how we invest in development for rare diseases and make the process more predictable. Now, the Food and Drug Administration has approved a number of treatments for rare disease, and they have shown significant flexibility at times. But I think what's critical to understand is that flexibility alone is not enough. What we need is a certain amount of predictability, and I think that is where there's some improvement could happen. Many of the treatment strategies now are based on regulatory precedents and other disorders, and I think that we need to develop better ways to attack diseases as rare as Matthew's. Now, this year, I think last year, there's been 2 products for ultra-rare disorders that affect less than 6,000 U.S., and if you look through the last 12 years, maybe 2 to 3 products a year approved for ultra-rare, which is about 85% of the rare diseases. And while that's good and good for those 2 diseases, the truth is at that rate, it will take us 150 years or so to even do half of the diseases that are out there. So it's an extremely slow rate, and that means a lot of people waiting, even though there may be billions of value in NIH research invested that hasn't really been translated. So what I think we need to do is do better and figure out ways to improve what we're doing in the process. And I think we can do a lot more with the science that we already have and turn our investment in research into more therapeutics. Now, one of the things that's important to know is that there have been significant regulatory changes in the past that have made impact. Next slide. And that's the accelerated approval regulation that came in 1992 when the FDA basically, because of the pressure of the AIDS organizations, came up with a plan to use markers, this is like a blood test or a urine test, to approve a product if it was reasonably likely to predict clinical benefit. And this is in the middle of the AIDS crisis where we didn't have time, 5 to 7 years, all the patients who were out there would already be dead before the next drug would come out. And in that time, there's been a number of drugs in the HIV and the cancer field approved by accelerated approval. It's been really enormously successful. And the FDA has had some criticism over this program, but I would say is one of their most successful after the Orphan Drug Act in terms of getting cutting-edge therapy through. But not everyone's benefiting. And if you are a rare disease, accelerated approval hasn't really helped you. The genetic case, there's only been 1 approval in the first 16 years, even though there's hundreds of diseases which might benefit. And while there have been a couple approvals a year over the last decade, it hasn't been enough. So on the next slide, we show what happens in the HIV area. So in 92, the rules changed, and you could get a blood test marker. In the coming 16 years, there were 25 new chemical entity drugs, 4 combination drugs, 6 mechanisms of action, multiple startup companies, lots of biotech jobs, all generated and changing HIV from death sentence in 92. If you remember the crisis, everyone thought we're all going to die from HIV infection, and now a chronic managed disease. That's innovation happening. And that all happens because they changed so you can use a blood test to get approval. That small a change. So if we look at what we could do in genetic disease and make that same policy change more accessible to the rare disease space. And what will happen then is you'll get more companies saying, well, if that process, that regulatory pathway is more predictable, then I'm willing to invest the money because then I know what my costs are and it will end up making more sense. Instead of having government investment, there's billions of dollars of other money out there that would invest again. And they're not investing right now in startup biotech. They're not investing in preclinical data from universities. All that stuff is just sitting there now. They're not willing to take the risks. But we changed the policy, just like with an HIV, and improve it for rare diseases. We think you can do tremendous things in terms of expanding the amount of investment. We published a paper I recommend you look at, just showing a careful financial calculation of how much benefit it would be. And what we are saying there is you would get 3 times as many drugs developed for the same investment. With $1 billion invested, 36 drugs developed, rather than what would right now cost, you'd probably only get maybe 10 to 11 drugs. So a very big effect. So we think there's much more that could be done. We think that improvement of the accelerated approval pathway would be one of the ways to do it, and we're advocating the fast track ultra orphan, which is just simply to help improve the policy around accelerated approval so that we can get that same effect that they got in HIV. So I have to, but thank you.